A young girl's quiet plea to an FBI agent, "Help me," sparks a journey of courage, resilience, and unwavering pursuit of justice. When Agent Tom Parker meets Lily, an orphan with a haunting secret, he realizes her few words conceal unimaginable suffering and injustice. But the road to justice is steep, as Tom finds himself facing off against a powerful man who's used to slipping through the cracks. Will he manage to save Lily and the other children before it's too late? Join us in this gripping story of perseverance, strength, and redemption. If you believe in the power of courage and the pursuit of justice, hit the like button, share this story, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that show the triumph of humanity over darkness. Let us know in the comments how this story impacted you and stay with us till the end. You won't want to miss it. The evening was cloaked in a thick, uneasy silence. The streets were empty, save for the soft hum of distant traffic, blending with the occasional shuffle of fallen leaves underfoot. It was the kind of night that made one quicken their pace and look over their shoulder, even if they were alone. Agent Tom Parker of the FBI leaned against his car, taking a sip of coffee as he scanned his surroundings with a casual vigilance. As a seasoned agent, he'd learned to trust his instincts, which rarely led him astray. Tonight felt different. He couldn't quite shake the sense that something, or someone, was out there. Then, almost out of nowhere, he noticed movement from the shadows. It was subtle at first, a shift in the dark, and then a small figure began to emerge, stepping timidly into the faint glow of a streetlight. Tom squinted, his gaze sharpening as he realized it was a young girl, barefoot, thin, and with a haunted expression that made his stomach twist with a mixture of dread and concern. He didn't move immediately, aware that any sudden gesture might scare her off. Instead, he kept his posture relaxed, meeting her gaze with a calm, steady expression. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice carrying a warmth that wasn't often necessary in his line of work. The girl didn't answer right away. She seemed to hesitate, glancing around as if afraid of being followed. Her small hands clutched tightly to her chest. Finally, she took a shaky step forward, her face partially illuminated by the streetlight, revealing the traces of dirt smudged across her cheeks, a faint bruise on her wrist. She stopped just a few steps away, close enough for him to hear her breath hitch as she gathered her courage. "Help me," she whispered, the two words laced with a desperation that cut through the stillness of the night. Tom felt a chill run down his spine. The weight of her request struck him instantly. There was something deeper here, something urgent and dangerous, and he could see it in her frightened eyes. He took a deep breath, setting his coffee down on the roof of his car before reaching into his jacket and activating his radio. "This is Agent Parker. I need immediate backup at my location. Possible child endangerment case," he reported, keeping his tone steady as his mind raced through protocol. Lily flinched slightly at the sound of his voice on the radio, her eyes darting back toward the shadows from which she had emerged. Noticing her fear, Tom quickly pocketed the radio and stepped a little closer, holding up his hands in a gesture of reassurance. Hey, he said gently, lowering his voice again. "You're safe now. I'm here to help." She looked up at him, studying his face as if searching for any trace of deception. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke, and Tom could feel the gravity of the moment hanging between them. After a long pause, she nodded, her shoulders sagging as if surrendering to a force she could no longer fight alone. Tom opened the back seat of his car, pulling out a blanket and a small emergency kit he kept for cases exactly like this one. He wrapped the blanket around her small, trembling frame, offering her a bottle of water and a granola bar. She took them hesitantly, clutching them as if they were lifelines. As she sipped the water, Tom watched her closely, waiting for her to feel safe enough to speak again. He knew that every moment was precious in cases like this. Any delay could mean lives at risk, not just hers. Finally, Lily looked up, her voice barely audible. "There are others," she murmured, eyes welling up as she held back a sob. Tom's chest tightened, his pulse quickening as the implications of her words settled in. The night had taken on a new gravity, one that he could not ignore. Lily's plea had only opened the door to what was clearly a much darker, more tangled situation than he had anticipated. "Can you tell me where?" he asked, his tone patient yet urgent. She nodded faintly, casting another wary glance behind her before lowering her gaze. I can show you," she whispered, her fingers gripping the blanket so tightly her knuckles turned white. Tom gave her a reassuring nod, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Okay, we'll go together," he said, his voice filled with a quiet determination. "And I promise I'll keep you safe." The sound of approaching sirens began to fill the air, a chorus of lights flashing through the night. Tom felt a surge of relief as his backup arrived, yet he knew that this was only the beginning. For Lily, for him, and for whoever else might be out there, waiting for a rescue they weren't sure would ever come. Before we continue with this heartwarming story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This is how you can contribute and help us continue bringing meaningful stories about justice and overcoming challenges. Click the subscribe button now and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Let's keep going. The sirens had faded into the background, replaced by the low murmur of agents communicating on their radios. Tom guided Lily to sit on a nearby bench under a streetlight, casting a warm but soft glow over her pale, exhausted face. He crouched down to her level, his eyes gentle but intense, trying to read every flicker of emotion that crossed her face. "Lily," he said softly, "can you tell me what happened? Why are you out here alone?" Lily's gaze dropped to the ground, her fingers nervously twisting the edges of the blanket around her shoulders. The silence stretched, and Tom could feel his heartbeat echoing in his ears. He wanted to press her, to ask more questions, but he knew the risk of overwhelming her. It's hard to explain," she whispered, barely audible. "They took us, told us not to talk, or they'd hurt us." A chill crept down Tom's spine. He kept his tone steady, fighting to keep his expression calm. "Who took you, Lily? Was it someone you knew?" She shook her head quickly, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Her eyes held a haunted look, like someone who'd seen far too much. They came at night. We were all asleep, and then we were in a van." Tom took a deep breath, pressing gently. "How many of you were there?" Lily hesitated, counting silently on her fingers. "Maybe 8 or 9. I don't know all their names. Some were younger, like my sister," she added, her voice breaking slightly. A lump formed in Tom's throat, and he reached out, giving her shoulder a gentle, reassuring squeeze. "Your sister," he echoed, his voice low and warm. "Is she still there? With them?" Lily's lip quivered, and she blinked rapidly, struggling to hold back tears. "Yes," she whispered, finally looking up into his eyes, her gaze filled with a mixture of helplessness and determination. "I ran away because I couldn't let her stay there alone." Tom clenched his jaw, the anger boiling beneath his skin. He wished he could say something to ease her pain, but words felt empty. Instead, he nodded, his voice firm but soft. "I understand, Lily, and I promise we'll do everything we can to bring her back, to bring them all back." She bit her lip, nodding slightly as she absorbed his words, her shoulders visibly relaxing as the trust between them deepened. One of the agents approached, his footsteps barely audible on the pavement. "Sir, we've secured the perimeter. Do we have a lead?" Tom nodded at Lily. "Lily here has important information for us, but we'll take it slowly," he replied, gesturing for the agent to keep a respectful distance. Turning back to her, he softened his tone. "Lily, do you think you could tell me where you came from? Maybe a landmark or something you remember?" She took a shaky breath, her voice barely more than a whisper. "There was a big red building with broken windows, and I remember the smell. It was awful, like old garbage and something rotten." Tom's stomach turned as he visualized the scene she was describing. The smell, the broken windows, a likely rundown warehouse or abandoned structure. "Anything else, Lily? Anything you heard them say?" Her brow furrowed, as if dredging up those memories was like walking through a nightmare. "They said something about moving us soon. About money," she added, her voice laced with confusion. "I don't understand, but they always talked about money. And someone, they kept saying his name. Larkin, I think." Tom's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. He'd heard that name before in connection with underground trafficking. If Lily's account was accurate, They were dealing with someone dangerous and well-connected. "Lily," he said gently, choosing his words carefully, "this Larkin, do you remember anything about him? What he looked like? Or maybe his voice?" She closed her eyes, a visible shiver passing through her body. He was tall, with a deep voice. He called me and the others things, like we weren't people. It was cold. Tom felt his jaw clench again, his fists tightening involuntarily. The sense of helplessness and rage was almost overwhelming, but he kept his focus on her, his voice calm and steady. "I'm so sorry you went through that, Lily, but I want you to know that your bravery in coming here tonight, it's going to help us stop him. It's going to save your sister and everyone else." She managed a small, wavering smile, the first glimmer of hope he'd seen in her face since they'd met. You really think so?" she asked, her voice barely louder than a breath. "I know so," Tom replied firmly, giving her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "You're safe now, and we'll make sure they are too." The sound of the night returned slowly around them. The faint chirp of crickets, the hum of a distant car. Lily wrapped the blanket tighter around herself, her eyes tired but no longer filled with fear. Tom rose to his feet, gesturing for his team to gather. His expression hardened as he addressed them, his voice low but filled with determination. "We've got a lead. We're dealing with a suspect known as Larkin, operating likely from an abandoned location nearby. We move in quickly, carefully, and no one, especially not him, escapes justice tonight." As the agents prepared, Tom glanced back at Lily, who watched him with a mixture of fear and admiration. "Lily," he said softly, "stay here with Officer Kelsey. She's going to take care of you while we bring your sister back. And when this is over, you two will never have to worry about them again." Lily nodded, clutching the blanket like a shield, her small voice steady but quiet. "Be careful, okay?" Tom managed a reassuring smile, giving her one final nod. "Always." With that, he turned, joining his team as they moved out into the night, each of them determined to bring an end to the horrors that had ensnared Lily and so many others. The drive was short but felt endless. Tom's hands gripped the steering wheel as his team drove in convoy, the faint glow of headlights illuminating their path. Beside him, Officer Kelsey briefed him quietly on the route to the location Lily had described. "Tom, this place, it's not in the best part of town. We're talking rundown buildings, few streetlights. A place where people go to be forgotten," Kelsey murmured, glancing at the faded, empty buildings as they passed by. Tom's jaw tightened as he scanned the area, taking in the dilapidated structures with shattered windows and graffiti-covered walls. Every inch of this place seemed to breathe an air of abandonment, yet he knew there was life, children, hidden behind those decaying facades. "Stay sharp," he said to the team over his radio, his voice tense but controlled. "We don't know how many people we're dealing with, and we can't afford any mistakes. We go in quiet, keep the element of surprise. Our priority is the kids." He glanced at Kelsey, her expression hardening as she met his gaze. "We'll bring them home, Tom," she said, a quiet determination in her voice. They pulled up just a few blocks from the address Lily had given, parking their vehicles in a way that allowed for a quick exit but kept them concealed from view. The team moved in formation, slipping through the shadows, each footfall soft and precise, like predators stalking prey. As they neared the building, the rancid smell Lily had mentioned hit them, the sour stench of rotting garbage and mildew, tinged with something far more unsettling. Tom's nose wrinkled involuntarily, but he pushed down the discomfort, steeling himself for what was to come. He gestured for his team to stop just outside a side entrance, whispering into his radio, "Everyone in position? Copy that." A voice crackled back, "On your go, Tom." Taking a deep breath, Tom gave the signal, his hand firm as he pressed down on the handle and pushed the door open. The room they entered was dimly lit by a single, flickering bulb, casting eerie shadows that danced across the filthy walls. They moved through the building like shadows themselves, each agent checking rooms in silence, scanning every inch for signs of life. Tom's heart pounded, his senses heightened by the stillness around them, the anticipation like a weight in his chest. Suddenly, a muffled sound broke the silence, a quiet sob, barely audible, coming from a room down the hallway. Tom motioned for the team to stop, his eyes meeting Kelsey's. She nodded, her expression tense yet resolute. He crept toward the sound, his footsteps nearly silent on the worn, creaking floorboards. The door was slightly ajar, and he peered inside, his pulse racing. There, huddled in the corner, was a group of children, their eyes wide with fear as they looked up at him. They were dirty, their clothes torn, and the exhaustion in their expressions told him all he needed to know. These were the kids Lily had spoken of. Tom crouched down, his voice a low, comforting whisper. "Hey, it's okay. My name's Tom, and I'm here to help you. We're going to get you out of here." A young boy, barely more than 6, clung to a girl's arm, his eyes wet with tears. Are you really here to save us?" he asked, his voice trembling. Tom nodded, his voice steady. "Yes, I promise. But we have to be very quiet and move quickly. Can you do that for me?" The children nodded, and Tom gestured for the rest of the team to enter the room. They moved swiftly, gathering the children and wrapping them in blankets, their voices calm and encouraging. One of the children tugged on Tom's sleeve, her eyes wide and frightened. They said they'd hurt us if we tried to leave. Are they still here?" Tom's gaze hardened, and he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Not for long," he replied, his voice filled with a quiet, dangerous resolve. "We won't let them hurt you again." As they escorted the children out, Tom spotted movement from the corner of his eye. A figure loomed in the shadows of the hallway, tall and menacing. Tom's hand instinctively went to his weapon as he met the man's gaze. Well, the man sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "FBI thinks they can waltz in here and take what's mine?" Tom felt a surge of anger, but he kept his expression steady. "These children aren't yours," he said, his tone cold and controlled. "They never were." The man, tall, with a cruel glint in his eye, let out a low chuckle, his gaze flickering toward the children huddled together behind Tom. "Oh, but they are. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Tom's grip on his weapon tightened, but he kept his voice calm, his words laced with a quiet threat. "And you have no idea who you're dealing with. This ends now." A tense silence fell over the hallway, broken only by the shuffling of the children as Kelsey and the other agents moved them towards safety. The man's eyes darted between Tom and the children, realizing he was outnumbered. With a snarl, he took a step back, disappearing into the shadows as the agents quickly gathered the children and began their exit. Tom's jaw was set, his focus unwavering as he kept his gaze on the hallway, prepared for any sudden movement. The children clung to the agents as they guided them toward the exit, their small hands clutching at whatever they could for reassurance. Tom led the way, his heart pounding as he kept one eye on the shadows, the other on the path to freedom. As they finally made it outside, the fresh night air filled his lungs, the cool breeze a stark contrast to the stifling, rotten smell inside. He felt a surge of relief as he watched the children bundle together under the safety of the streetlights, their faces softening with the realization that they were truly free. Tom knelt down to Lily's sister, who was now wrapped securely in a blanket, her eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Tom smiled softly, nodding. "You're safe now," he assured her, his tone gentle. "We're all safe now." But as he glanced back toward the building, his expression hardened. The man might have escaped, but Tom knew this was far from over. The children huddled together under the soft glow of the streetlights, clinging to their blankets and each other. Some were silent, their faces blank with shock, while others quietly sobbed, the weight of their ordeal settling upon them now that they were finally safe. Tom felt a tightening in his chest as he watched them, each child a reminder of the horrors they had faced. Lily's sister, a small girl with wide, tear-filled eyes, glanced up at him, her voice barely a whisper. Where are we going now?" Tom knelt down beside her, his voice soft but firm. "We're going somewhere safe, I promise. No one is going to hurt you anymore." He glanced around at the other children, who looked at him with the same mixture of fear and hope. "All of you are safe now." Lily's sister nodded, her small hand clutching the edge of her blanket tightly. Is my sister okay? She got us help, didn't she? Tom's face softened as he nodded. Yes, she's safe too. And she's very brave. She wanted to make sure you were safe. One of the older boys, his face streaked with dirt and tears, spoke up, his voice shaking with anger and fear. They said we were just things to them. Said no one cared about us. His hands balled into fists as he struggled to hold back a fresh wave of tears. But you came. You came for us. Tom reached out, placing a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. You're not things, and you were never forgotten. You're important, and you deserve to be safe. Don't ever believe what they told you. The boy looked up, his eyes searching Tom's face, as if seeking some confirmation that this nightmare was truly over. With a hesitant nod, he seemed to find what he was looking for, his body relaxing as the tension began to fade. Kelsey approached, her voice soft as she addressed Tom. The team's ready to move. We've secured a temporary shelter for them, and medical staff is standing by. But, Tom, we need to talk about what's next. Tom's gaze darkened as he looked back toward the building, a mixture of frustration and determination brewing within him. Larkin's still out there. We saved these kids tonight, but as long as he's free, others are still in danger. This is far from over. Kelsey placed a hand on his arm, her expression solemn. We'll get him, Tom. We have enough evidence now, thanks to Lily and these kids. But we need to be smart about this. We're dealing with someone who has resources and connections. Tom's jaw tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. Resources, connections, it doesn't matter. He's not getting away with this. One of the youngest girls, holding onto her older brother's hand, looked up at Tom with wide, curious eyes. Will the bad man, will he hurt other kids? Tom knelt down again, looking her directly in the eyes, his voice filled with quiet determination. Not if I can help it. We're going to make sure he never does this to anyone else. The girl nodded, her lips pressing into a thin line as she held onto his words. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Thank you for saving us. Tom managed a small smile, his heart heavy with the responsibility he felt. You're very brave, all of you, he said, glancing around at the children. Tonight, you did the hardest thing. Asking for help. That took courage, and it's because of you that we were able to help. The children's faces softened, each of them visibly holding onto the reassurance in his words. Lily's sister, her face still pale but her expression a little brighter, clutched her blanket tightly as she leaned closer. Will we see Lily soon? She asked, hope flickering in her eyes. Tom nodded firmly. Yes, we'll reunite you with Lily very soon. She's waiting for you, just as much as you've been waiting for her. As he stood, Kelsey gestured for the team to begin moving the children to the waiting vehicles. The agents moved carefully, guiding each child with gentle words and gestures, their voices calm as they helped them settle into the cars. Tom stayed back, his eyes fixed on the building, the shadows that had hidden so many dark secrets now laid bare. He could feel the anger simmering beneath his skin, a fire fueled by the knowledge that Larkin was still out there, untouched and unpunished. Kelsey stepped up beside him, her voice low. Tom, we'll get him. But right now, these kids need you. They need to see that they're safe and that someone is there for them. He took a deep breath, nodding as he turned back to the vehicles. You're right, he murmured. They deserve our full attention tonight. As they began the journey to the shelter, Tom settled into the back of the van with a few of the children, offering them words of comfort as they rode through the city streets. The hum of the engine was a soothing background, a reminder that they were moving farther from the horrors they'd left behind. One of the older girls, her face still streaked with the remnants of tears, leaned against him, her voice hesitant. Do you think we'll ever be okay again? Tom looked at her, his gaze filled with empathy and understanding. It's going to take time, he said softly, choosing his words carefully. But you have each other, and you have people who care about you now. You're stronger than you know, and with time, things will get better. She nodded, her expression thoughtful as she absorbed his words, a small spark of hope igniting in her eyes. I hope so, she whispered. resting her head against his shoulder. As they arrived at the shelter, the children were guided out by the medical team, each one enveloped in a warm, welcoming embrace. Tom watched as they disappeared inside, his heart both heavy and light, knowing that, for tonight, they were safe. But as he turned to leave, a thought lingered in his mind, a reminder that this battle was far from over. Larkin was still out there, and until he was brought to justice, there would be no rest. Back at the FBI headquarters, Tom strode down the brightly lit corridor, his footsteps echoing against the polished floors. His mind raced, images of Lily and the other children flashing before him. There was a determination in his eyes, a quiet resolve that fueled his every step. Tonight, he thought, they'd finally put an end to Larkin's operations. As he entered the conference room, his team was already there, gathered around a screen displaying Larkin's profile. Agent Kelsey shot him a reassuring nod as he took his seat. "All right," Tom began, scanning the faces of his colleagues. "We've got testimony from multiple witnesses, the location of his last known hideout, and a name that connects him to the trafficking ring. This is it. We're bringing Larkin in." One of his senior colleagues, Agent Myers, frowned slightly, his fingers tapping thoughtfully on the table. "It's not that simple, Tom. Larkin's been evading us for years. He has allies in places you wouldn't believe. If we're going to bring him in, we need airtight evidence." Tom's jaw tightened. "What more do we need, Myers? We have children who can identify him, who have experienced his brutality firsthand. Isn't that enough?" Myers held his gaze, his expression steely. "I wish it were. But you know as well as I do how slippery someone like Larkin can be. He has connections, powerful ones. Without concrete physical evidence tying him to that building, any case we build could crumble in court." A frustrated silence fell over the room, broken only by the soft hum of the projector. Tom clenched his fists, the weight of his responsibility pressing down on him. "So what are you saying?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That he gets away with this?" Myers exhaled, his voice softer now. "I'm saying we need to be careful. If we move too soon, he'll slip through our fingers, and we may never get another chance." Kelsey looked between the two men, her eyes filled with a mix of empathy and frustration. "Tom, we all want to get Larkin, but Myers is right. If we go in unprepared, we're risking more than just this case." Tom shook his head, a bitter taste in his mouth. "We have children's lives on the line here, and every second we wait." He's out there, planning his next move. Another agent, Richards, leaned forward, his voice hesitant. "Actually, there's something else. We found out Larkin has ties to one of our own. There's a possibility someone from the inside tipped him off." The room fell silent, every agent exchanging uneasy glances. Tom felt a chill run down his spine, the reality of Richard's words sinking in. "You're telling me there's a mole?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Richards nodded, his expression grim. "We're not sure who yet, but it explains a lot of the roadblocks we've hit. Someone's been feeding him information, keeping him one step ahead." Tom ran a hand over his face, the weight of exhaustion settling over him. "Unbelievable. We're fighting against our own system." His voice was laced with frustration, but beneath it, a hint of betrayal. "How are we supposed to protect anyone if we can't even trust the people in this building?" Kelsey placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, her voice steady. "We're not giving up, Tom. We just need to be smarter, more cautious. We'll find the mole, and we'll build a case strong enough to bring Larkin down once and for all." Tom sighed, looking down at the table, his mind racing with conflicting emotions. The false hope he'd felt, the belief that tonight would be the end of Larkin's tyranny, was slipping away, replaced by the bitter reality of the obstacles before them. Myers cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "We still have options, Tom. We can conduct a more thorough investigation at the last location, gather forensic evidence, interview the children again. It'll be hard, but if we're patient, we'll have enough to take him down." Tom nodded slowly, his jaw set with determination. "Fine, we'll do it your way. But every moment we delay is a moment he's free, hurting others." He met Myers' gaze, his eyes dark and intense. "We have to move fast, for the kids' sake." As the meeting concluded, Tom lingered, staring at the empty conference room, his mind replaying every moment with the children, every promise he'd made. He'd told them they were safe, that justice would be served. But now, faced with the possibility of failure, he couldn't shake the gnawing sense of helplessness. Kelsey approached, her voice quiet. "Tom, I know this isn't what you expected, but we're doing everything we can." He turned to her, his voice filled with a mix of frustration and resignation. "It's just, they trust us, Kelsey. Those kids, they believe we can protect them. And now I'm supposed to tell them we're stuck in a waiting game." Kelsey's eyes softened, her hand resting on his arm. "We're not stuck, Tom. We're being careful. And the kids need you to stay strong. They need to see that we're still fighting for them." He nodded, exhaling slowly. "You're right. I want him behind bars. I want those kids to sleep without nightmares." Kelsey gave him a small, reassuring smile. "We'll get there, one step at a time." As they left the room, Tom's mind churned with thoughts of Larkin and the traitor lurking within their own ranks. He knew this fight was far from over, and the path ahead was filled with obstacles. But one thing was certain, he wouldn't rest until justice was served. Tom stared at the file in his hands, the text blurring as his eyes scanned the endless lines of data. His head ached from the hours of reading, yet no matter how many times he reviewed the evidence, he kept circling back to the same question. Where was the missing link? Kelsey entered the room, closing the door quietly behind her. "Tom, we've got a problem," she said, her voice heavy with concern. He looked up, a sinking feeling already forming in his gut. "What now?" Kelsey took a seat across from him, her expression grim. "The judge just denied our warrant to search Larkin's other known properties. He's calling the evidence insufficient and wants a more concrete connection between Larkin and the trafficking operation." Tom's hands slammed against the table, frustration boiling over. "Insufficient? We have testimonies, sightings, physical evidence at the last location. What more does he need?" Kelsey shook her head, her expression filled with the same frustration. "Apparently, he's not convinced it directly ties to Larkin. He thinks it could have been someone else using the location under his name." Tom exhaled sharply, his eyes darkening. "Of course, because Larkin's a ghost. He always finds a way to slip through the cracks." Kelsey reached across the table, her hand resting on his arm in a gesture of comfort. "Tom, we'll figure this out, but we need to be strategic. We can't afford any mistakes now." Tom met her gaze, his jaw clenched. "I know, but every day we wait, every setback, it's more time for him to hurt someone else. Those kids deserve better than this bureaucratic nonsense." As he spoke, his phone buzzed on the table. Tom picked it up, glancing at the screen. It was Lily's caseworker. "Kelsey, give me a minute," he said, stepping out of the room to answer the call. The voice on the other end was calm, but Tom sensed the underlying urgency. "Agent Parker, I wanted to update you on Lily and her sister's situation. They're struggling to settle into the temporary shelter. Lily's been asking about you. She keeps saying you're the only one who can keep them safe." Tom's chest tightened, the weight of the children's trust pressing down on him. "I'll check in on them soon. Tell her she's safe, and that we're doing everything we can to protect them." There was a pause on the other end, then a soft sigh. "Thank you, Agent Parker. I think she really believes you." After hanging up, Tom leaned against the wall, closing his eyes as he tried to push down the overwhelming sense of helplessness. He had promised them safety, yet every obstacle seemed to put them further out of reach from the justice they deserved. Kelsey stepped out, joining him in the hallway. She looked at him, her expression softening. "Lily?" He nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "They're depending on us, Kelsey. I don't know how much more of this I can take." Kelsey leaned against the wall beside him, her tone gentle but firm. "Tom, we're in this together. We may have setbacks, but that doesn't mean we stop fighting. We owe it to those kids to keep pushing." Tom looked at her, the exhaustion in his eyes clear. "Sometimes it feels like we're the only ones who care." Kelsey placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, her gaze unwavering. "We care, and as long as we do, we're not giving up." Just then, an agent approached them, a concerned look on his face. "Sir, we've got a situation. Larkin just filed a lawsuit against the department. He's accusing us of harassment and unlawful surveillance." Tom's eyes widened, the shock momentarily rendering him speechless. "You're joking, right?" The agent shook his head. "No, sir. He's claiming damages for invasion of privacy and emotional distress. His lawyers are threatening to take this to the media if we don't drop the case." Tom clenched his fists, anger and disbelief surging through him. Unbelievable. He's the criminal, and he's painting himself as the victim? Kelsey sighed, her expression a mix of frustration and resignation. This is his tactic. Shift the narrative, make himself the victim. He knows the system, and he's using it against us. Tom took a deep breath, his voice low and simmering with anger. "We're not backing down. Let him threaten. We'll face him in court if we have to, but we're not letting him walk away from this." Kelsey nodded, her hand resting reassuringly on his arm. "We're with you, Tom. All of us." As they returned to the conference room, Tom felt the weight of the case pressing down on him more than ever. Every step forward seemed to bring a new obstacle, each one more insidious than the last. Larkin was not only elusive, he was manipulating the system in ways that made him almost untouchable. But Tom knew he couldn't afford to lose sight of the goal. He couldn't let Larkin win. Taking his seat, he addressed the team, his voice filled with steely resolve. "All right, let's regroup. We may not have the warrant, but we're not out of options. I want every possible angle investigated, every piece of evidence re-examined. We're going to build a case so strong that even his connections can't save him." The team nodded, their faces determined, a silent agreement that they wouldn't let Larkin's tactics intimidate them. Kelsey leaned over, her voice low. "Tom, maybe we could speak with some of the kids again. See if there are any details they remember. Anything that might have slipped through the cracks." Tom nodded slowly, his mind already processing the idea. "It's worth a shot. Let's get in touch with their caseworkers and set up a time. We'll give them a chance to speak in a safe, comfortable environment." As the meeting adjourned, Tom felt a renewed sense of purpose. Larkin's lawsuit might have rattled him, but it had also solidified his resolve. This man was clever, calculating, and unafraid to manipulate the system. But Tom wouldn't rest until he saw him behind bars. As they filed out of the room, Kelsey placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice filled with quiet confidence. "We'll get him, Tom. It might take time, but we will." He looked at her, a small, tired smile crossing his face. "I know, and I won't stop until we do." Together, they walked down the hallway, the weight of the case heavy, but the determination to bring justice burning stronger than ever. The heavy steel door to the interrogation room closed with a resonant thud behind Tom. The air inside was thick with tension, and the harsh fluorescent lights cast unforgiving shadows across the room's sterile, gray walls. Seated at the metal table, hands folded in front of him, was Larkin. He wore a calm, almost amused expression, his lips curling into a smirk as Tom took his seat across from him. "Agent Parker," Larkin drawled, his tone laced with a mocking warmth. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Tom felt his jaw tighten, his hands clasping together as he fought to keep his composure. He had been waiting for this moment, but now, faced with the man responsible for so much suffering, he had to rein in his anger. He wouldn't give Larkin the satisfaction. "You know exactly why you're here, Larkin," Tom replied, his voice steady but ice cold. "And I suggest you drop the act. We both know what you're guilty of." Larkin chuckled, shaking his head as if Tom had just told a funny joke. "Guilty? Agent, all you have are baseless accusations. It seems to me that you're the one trying to play a part here, a desperate lawman grasping at straws." Tom leaned forward, his gaze hardening. "This isn't a game, Larkin. We have witnesses, children who remember everything. They're terrified of you, and they've told us exactly what you did to them." Larkin's smirk faded slightly, his eyes narrowing. "Terrified? No, Agent Parker. They're confused. Young minds are impressionable, easily manipulated. Much like your own, it seems." Tom's fists clenched under the table, his nails digging into his palms. He took a deep breath, refusing to let Larkin's words throw him off balance. Those kids aren't lying, Larkin, and neither am I. You preyed on them, exploited their fear and innocence. You're a coward. Larkin leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms with a casual, almost bored expression. A coward? That's rich, coming from someone who hides behind a badge, barking empty threats. Let me remind you, Agent, I have rights. You can't just drag me in here without proof. Tom's eyes blazed with barely contained fury. We have more than enough proof, and it's only a matter of time before we uncover the rest. Your network, your associates, they won't protect you forever. Larkin's smirk returned, his voice dropping to a low, taunting whisper. And yet, here I am, sitting across from you, calm and untouched. It must be so frustrating, chasing shadows, knowing you'll never catch me. The words hit Tom like a punch to the gut, but he didn't flinch. He leaned closer, his voice a barely restrained growl. You're wrong, Larkin. I'm closer than you think. And when this ends, you'll be rotting in a cell, forgotten by everyone who once protected you. For the first time, a flicker of irritation crossed Larkin's face, his composure slipping ever so slightly. You're delusional, he snapped, his voice sharp with anger. You think you can intimidate me? I've been doing this long before you ever put on that badge. I know how to work the system, and no matter what you try, you'll never pin me down. Tom felt a cold sense of satisfaction at the crack in Larkin's demeanor. That's where you're wrong. You're not untouchable, Larkin. You're just a bully who finally met someone who's not afraid of you. Larkin's gaze darkened, his hands gripping the edges of the table. You think you're better than me, Parker? That your little badge makes you righteous? You're just another pawn, used by the system, discarded when you're no longer useful. Tom's voice was low, steady, unwavering. The difference is, I'm here to protect people. You're here to destroy them. And no matter how hard you try to twist things, that's something you'll never understand. A silence settled over the room, thick and suffocating. Larkin's expression shifted, his mask of arrogance slipping to reveal a flash of something darker, more insidious. You know what happens to people who get in my way, don't you, Parker? They disappear. Tom's eyes narrowed, his gaze fierce and unyielding. Is that a threat? Larkin's smirk returned, colder this time, devoid of any humor. Just a reminder. You might think you're invincible, but everyone has a weakness. I could make one phone call, and your whole world would crumble. Tom felt a surge of anger, but he remained calm, his voice a quiet, steely promise. I don't scare easily, Larkin, and no matter what you try, I'm not backing down. The door to the interrogation room opened, and Kelsey stepped in, her expression grave. She shot Tom a glance, then looked at Larkin with a mixture of disgust and defiance. Time's up, Larkin, she said curtly. Enjoy your cell while you can. Larkin laughed softly, a cold, mocking sound. My cell? Please. This is just a temporary inconvenience. Soon enough, I'll be out, and you'll be the ones answering questions. Tom stood, his eyes meeting Larkin's with a fierce, unbroken intensity. We'll see about that. But know this, you won't intimidate us. Your days of freedom are numbered. Larkin's smile faded, his gaze hardening as he watched Tom and Kelsey leave the room. The steel door slammed shut, sealing him inside. Outside, Tom exhaled, feeling the adrenaline drain from his body. Kelsey placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, her voice steady. You did well, Tom. He's rattled, even if he won't show it. Tom managed a tired smile. It's a start. But we're not done yet. Kelsey nodded, her voice filled with determination. No, we're not. And we're going to see this through, no matter what. Together, they walked down the hallway, each step filled with a quiet resolve. They knew the battle wasn't over, but for the first time, Tom felt a glimmer of hope. Larkin might be powerful, but he wasn't invincible. And as long as they were fighting, they would never give up. The atmosphere in the FBI's briefing room was charged with anticipation. Tom sat at the head of the table, surrounded by his team, each of them bearing the weariness of the case's challenges, but also a glimmer of hope. The culmination of their relentless efforts was close, Yet the stakes felt higher than ever. Kelsey entered, carrying a slim file in her hands. She placed it on the table and looked directly at Tom, her eyes alight with determination. "We've got it, Tom. We finally have what we need." Tom leaned forward, his heart pounding. "What did you find?" Kelsey opened the file, her voice steady as she laid out the evidence. "It's from Lily's sister." She finally opened up to one of the counselors. She remembered a detail from the night they were taken. A tattoo. A distinctive mark on Larkin's left wrist. It's a symbol connected to the trafficking ring, and we have documented photographs to confirm it. Tom's face softened, a sense of relief flooding through him. That's it. That's the physical connection we needed. Myers, who had been quietly listening, leaned forward, his tone cautious but hopeful. "It's concrete, but we'll need to move fast." With his influence, Larkin could still try to get bail. Tom's gaze hardened. "Not this time. We're going to hit him with everything we've got." As they prepared the final steps to secure Larkin's arrest, the air in the room shifted from the usual tension to a palpable determination. Each agent was fueled by the knowledge that, finally, justice was within reach. Hours later, Tom found himself in the courtroom, the air thick with anticipation as Larkin was brought in, his usual smug expression replaced by one of irritation. The judge glanced at the papers, her face impassive as she looked down at Larkin. "Mr. Larkin," she began, her voice calm but firm, "the evidence presented to this court is undeniable. You are charged with multiple counts of human trafficking, exploitation of minors, and obstruction of justice." Larkin shifted in his seat, his jaw clenched as he glared at Tom, the hatred in his eyes unmistakable. "This is a setup," he hissed under his breath, his voice low but venomous. Tom met his gaze without flinching, his voice steady. "It's over, Larkin. You can't manipulate the system anymore. These kids will get justice." The judge's gavel struck, her voice echoing through the courtroom. "Mr. Larkin, you will be remanded without bail pending your trial. Your influence, your connections, they won't protect you from the law." A murmur of relief spread through the courtroom. Tom felt a wave of satisfaction, a weight lifting from his shoulders as the realization settled in. Larkin would no longer have power over the lives he had destroyed. Outside the courthouse, Tom was greeted by Kelsey and the other agents, their faces filled with a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. Kelsey smiled, clapping him on the back. "We did it, Tom. He's finally where he belongs." Tom nodded, his voice filled with quiet pride. "This is for them, for Lily, her sister, and every child he's hurt. They can finally move forward." Just then, Lily and her sister approached, their caseworker by their side. Lily looked up at Tom, her eyes bright with gratitude. "You did it, didn't you? He's gone now?" Tom knelt down, his face softening as he met her gaze. "Yes, Lily. He won't hurt you or anyone else ever again." Lily's sister clutched his hand, her small fingers gripping tightly as she whispered, "Thank you, Agent Parker. We can finally sleep now, can't we?" Tom felt his chest tighten, and he nodded, his voice choked with emotion. "Yes, you can. You're safe now." The two girls hugged him, and for a moment, the exhaustion, the frustration, all melted away, replaced by the quiet, profound joy of knowing they were free. As Tom stood, watching them walk away hand in hand, he felt a sense of peace that he hadn't known in years. The battle had been long and brutal, but it was worth every second. Kelsey placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice soft. "You gave them their lives back, Tom. That's something no one can take away." He nodded, a small smile crossing his face. "And that's why we do this, isn't it?" They walked away from the courthouse, the sun setting behind them, casting a warm glow over the city. The shadows had finally lifted, and with every step, Tom felt lighter, knowing that justice had been served. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey with Tom, Lily, and the brave children who found a way to hold on to hope despite all odds. Stories like these are a wake-up call, reminding us that fighting injustice requires not just the strength of those who enforce the law, but the strength within each of us to stay resilient, empathetic, and proactive. Tom's battle with Larkin wasn't just about catching a criminal. It was about restoring dignity, giving children their lives back and reaffirming our belief in justice, no matter how many obstacles we face. We may not all be agents, but each of us has the power to make a difference by staying informed, supporting those in need, and holding ourselves and others accountable. Let's continue to stand up against injustice in our own communities. If this story moved you, please subscribe for more, share it with others, and comment below on what lessons resonated most with you. Together, we can make a change,